The telephone in the Paris apartment rings once. Mahmoud Hamshari, the PLO's official representative in France, puts down his newspaper. He is a man of routine, a creature of habit. The call is expected. A journalist, he thinks. An Italian? He has an interview scheduled. He walks to the phone, a heavy, black rotary model sitting on a polished mahogany table. He lifts the receiver. A calm voice on the other end, speaking French with a slight, unplaceable accent, asks a simple question. Is this Dr. Hamshari? He confirms his identity. Yes, this is he. A faint click echoes down the line. Nothing else. The line goes dead. Hamshari frowns, places the receiver back in its cradle. A wrong number, perhaps. He returns to his chair, to his newspaper. He is unaware that the confirmation of his voice has just completed an electronic circuit. He is unaware that less than a kilogram of composition C4, molded into the underside of his telephone table by a man who posed as a repairman 3 days prior, is now armed. The detonator is not timed. It is not proximity-based. It is a marvel of miniaturized engineering. A device tuned to a specific audio frequency, a high-pitched tone, inaudible to the human ear, that will be broadcast from a surveillance van parked 2 streets away. The men in the van are watching a decibel meter. They are waiting for the apartment to fall silent. They are waiting for Hamshari to be alone. They are part of a ghost unit, a unit that doesn't officially exist, operating under a name whispered only in the most secure rooms in Tel Aviv. Wrath of God. This is not an assassination. It is an execution, and the signal is about to be sent. The target list is long. Mahmoud Hamshari is number 2. There will be no warnings. There will be no negotiations. There will be only a sequence of events, precise and irreversible, playing out across a dozen cities. This is the new mathematics of asymmetric warfare, calculated in the aftermath of a failure so profound it had shaken a nation to its core. A failure that began in the one place that was supposed to represent global unity and peace. A failure that began in Munich. The briefing room was soundproofed, windowless, and located 3 levels beneath the streets of Tel Aviv. The only light came from a single overhead projector, casting a stark white rectangle onto a screen. In the rectangle was a black and white photograph of a man in a ski mask, leaning over a balcony. The date at the bottom read, September 5th, 1972. Golda Meir, Prime Minister of Israel, sat at the head of the long table. Her face, etched with the lines of 1,000 impossible decisions, was unreadable. To her right sat Zvi Zamir, the director of Mossad. Zamir was not a man of grand gestures. He was an architect of shadows, a former Palmach commander who had built his career on meticulous planning and the cold logic of intelligence. His greatest achievement to date was the successful exfiltration of the Iraqi MiG-21 pilot, Munir Redfa, a coup that had given the West its first look at the Soviets' premier fighter jet. His skill was information architecture, seeing the connections others missed, building networks of assets in hostile territory. To Mir's left sat General Aharon Yariv, her advisor on counterterrorism, and a man whose mind worked like a strategic map, always calculating 3 moves ahead. And at the far end of the table, observing, was Mike Harari. Harari was a legend within the Mossad Caesarea division, the operational arm. He was the man they sent when a mission was deemed impossible. He had built intelligence networks from scratch in Africa, run agents in the heart of Cairo, and his defining skill was improvisation under extreme pressure. He didn't just run operations, he inhabited them. These individuals, along with a handful of others from military intelligence and the cabinet, formed a secret body known as Committee X. Their existence was deniable. Their purpose was singular. Zamir began to speak, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. He was not telling a story. He was presenting a systems failure analysis. The subject was the Munich Massacre. He detailed the timeline with brutal precision. 5th of September, 0430. 8 members of the Black September faction of the Palestine Liberation Organization, using stolen keys and scaling a fence with the help of unsuspecting athletes, enter the Olympic Village at 31 Connollystrasse, 05:10. They stormed the apartments of the Israeli delegation. Wrestling coach Moshe Weinberg is the first to be killed, his body used to force entry into another apartment. Weightlifter Yosef Romano, a veteran of the Six-Day War, attempts to fight back and is shot, then castrated, left to bleed to death in front of the other hostages. 11 Israelis are taken. The world watches. The German police, with no anti-terror protocols, no specialized units, and a constitutional prohibition on using the army for domestic matters, are catastrophically unprepared. Their response is a textbook of errors. Snipers are dispatched, but they are not trained marksmen. They are traffic cops with rifles. Their positions are filmed by live television crews, broadcasting their locations to the terrorists inside who are watching the news. A negotiation begins. The terrorists demand the release of 236 Palestinian militants held in Israeli prisons. Israel's policy is absolute. No negotiation with terrorists. Golda Meir conveys this to the German government. The day grinds on. Finally, a plan is hatched. The terrorists and their hostages will be moved to Fürstenfeldbruck Air Base, where they are promised a plane to Cairo. It is a trap. Or it is supposed to be. Zamir, who had flown to Munich to act as an observer, describes the scene at the airbase with clinical disgust. The Germans had 5 snipers. The intelligence briefing said there were only 4 or 5 terrorists. There were 8. The snipers had no night vision equipment. They had no radio contact with each other. The armored personnel carriers meant to storm the area arrived late, stuck in traffic. A plan to have police disguised as flight crew on the waiting Boeing 727 was abandoned when the police officers voted to abort the mission, claiming it was suicidal. They simply left the empty plane. When the 2 lead terrorists, Isa and Tony, went to inspect the plane and found it empty, they knew they had been deceived. They ran back to the 2 helicopters holding the hostages. The order was given for the German snipers to open fire. It was 22:30. The firefight was a chaotic disaster. One sniper, positioned poorly, was in the line of fire of another. The terrorists were well armed and returned fire effectively. In the ensuing chaos, one of the terrorists threw a grenade into one helicopter, incinerating the 4 Israelis inside. Another sprayed the second helicopter with machine gun fire, killing the remaining 5. A German police officer was also killed. By the end, all 11 Israeli hostages were dead. 5 of the 8 terrorists were killed. 3 were captured. The games of peace and joy were stained with blood. But for Committee X, the ultimate failure came 55 days later. October 29th, 1972. Lufthansa Flight 615 is hijacked by Black September sympathizers. Their demand: the release of the 3 surviving Munich terrorists. The German government, eager to wash its hands of the entire affair and avoid further conflict on its soil, capitulates immediately. The 3 killers are flown to Libya, where they are greeted as heroes. That, Zamir concluded, was the moment the old rules died. The international community had proven itself unwilling or unable to act. Justice had not just been denied, it had been mocked. If the world would not hold these men accountable, Israel would. Golda Meir looked at each person in the room. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was low, but carried the weight of steel. "This is not about revenge," she said, though everyone knew that was part of it. "This is about sending a message. Every civilization has to decide which of its rules it is willing to break to ensure its own survival. They have broken ours. Now, we will break theirs. We will hunt down every single person involved in planning, financing, and carrying out the Munich attack. No matter where they are, no matter how long it takes." She turned to Zamir and Harari. "Prepare a list. Prepare a plan. This committee authorizes you to use any and all necessary means. There are no rules. There are no borders. You have a green light." The operation was codenamed Wrath of God. Its existence would be Israel's deepest secret. Its operatives would be ghosts, their successes buried, their failures disavowed. The hunt had begun. The first step was building the weapon. Mike Harari was given a blank check and total autonomy. He began to assemble a team not from the ranks of regular Mossad case officers or Katsas, but from the elite of Israel's special forces. Sayeret Matkal, Shayatet 13, and the paratroopers. These were men and women trained in direct action, demolition, and close-quarters combat. They were then retrained by Mossad in the arts of espionage, surveillance, cover identities, recruitment, and clandestine communication. The unit was given the designation Caesarea. Its members relinquished their names, their histories, their lives. They became phantoms, equipped with forged passports from a dozen different nations, funded by a web of front companies set up in Geneva and Brussels, specializing in everything from agricultural equipment to art dealing. Their command center was a series of safe houses scattered across Europe, anonymous apartments in Rome, Paris, Zurich, and London. Communication was a nightmare of tradecraft. Messages were passed through dead drops, coded advertisements in international newspapers, and brief, encrypted bursts over shortwave radio. The rule was simple. No direct contact with Tel Aviv unless it was a life-or-death emergency. The first name on the list was Wael Zweiter. Intel identified him as the PLO representative in Italy, and more importantly, a key operational figure for Black September in Europe. He was a cousin of Yasser Arafat, a poet, a translator of 1001 Nights into Italian. He was also, according to a well-placed source within the PLO, the man who had arranged the logistics and weapons for the Munich team. He lived in Rome. The Caesarea team assigned to him was small, just 4 operatives. For 2 weeks, they did nothing but watch. They mapped his daily routine, his walk to the Libyan embassy where he worked, his preferred cafe, the bookstore he visited every Tuesday, the route he took home to his apartment building in the Piazza Annibaliano. They learned he was cautious, but not paranoid. He felt safe in Rome. The plan was brutally simple. No bombs, no elaborate traps. Harari believed the first message had to be personal. On the night of October 16, 1972, just 41 days after the Munich massacre, 2 operatives waited in the dimly lit lobby of Zweiter's apartment building. Zweiter returned home around 10:30 p.m., carrying a bag of groceries. As he walked toward the elevator, the 2 men stepped out of the shadows. They confirmed his identity. Then they fired 12 shots from silenced .22 caliber Beretta pistols. 11 bullets for the 11 slain athletes. The 12th, Harari would later explain, was for the honor of Israel. They didn't wait to see the aftermath. They were out of the building in seconds, disappearing into the Roman night. The next morning, the Italian papers reported a gangland-style killing, a possible dispute among Palestinian factions. Mossad issued no statement. The message was not for the public, it was for the names on the list. It said, "We know who you are. We know where you live, and we are coming for you." The second target was Mahmoud Hamshari in Paris. This required a different approach. Hamshari was higher level, better protected, and lived in a secure apartment building. A shooting in the lobby was too risky. The team needed a method that was surgical and deniable. This is where the Mossad's technical division, Neviot, came into play. They developed the audio frequency-triggered bomb. The plan was a multi-stage process of infiltration and execution. Step 1. A Caesarea agent, posing as an Italian journalist, called Hamshari and scheduled an interview at a cafe, drawing him out of his apartment for a specific, known period of time. Step 2. While Hamshari was at the interview, a second operative, disguised as a telephone repairman, gained access to the building. He told the concierge there was a line fault affecting the entire floor. He entered Hamshari's apartment and, in less than 3 minutes, installed the C4 charge in the sophisticated receiver under the telephone table. The device was inert, a harmless lump of plastic, until armed. Step 3. The surveillance team, parked nearby in a delivery van, packed with electronic equipment, established a constant watch. They needed to know when Hamshari was alone. They used a laser microphone aimed at his apartment window, a device that could read the vibrations on the glass and translate them back into sound. For 2 days, they listened. They heard conversations with his wife and daughter. They heard him on the phone. They waited. Step 4. Execution. On December 8, 1972, the laser microphone indicated Hamshari was alone. The journalist made the prearranged call. The voice confirmation armed the device. The surveillance van commander gave the order. A technician pressed a button, broadcasting the high-frequency tone. The explosion was perfectly contained. It blew the floor upwards, killing Hamshari instantly, but causing minimal damage to the surrounding apartments. The French authorities were baffled. They suspected an internal PLO feud. The message was delivered again, this time with a technological signature. "We can reach you anywhere, even in your own home." The hunt escalated. Each target presented a new set of problems. In Cyprus, Hussein al-Bashir, the Fatah representative and a Black September liaison, was the target. His hotel room was bugged. The team learned he was a man of strict habits, including a timed evening routine. They also learned he was deeply paranoid and had his room swept for bugs daily. Neviot provided the solution. A bomb placed not in his room, but under his hotel bed mattress, triggered by a radio signal. The trigger was disguised as a television remote. An agent in a nearby room watched a miniature closed-circuit camera feed from a device hidden in the hallway. When al-Bashir lay down on his bed at his usual time, the agent pressed the button. The operation was a success. In Beirut, Basil al-Kubaisi, a law professor at the American University and a key weapons procurer for the PFLP, was identified. He was known to be heavily guarded. But surveillance revealed a weakness. A predictable route, he walked home alone after dark. On April 6, 1973, 2 Caesarea agents ambushed him on a quiet Paris street, using the same Beretta method as they had with Zweiter. Clean, quiet, and effective. The technology wasn't always about the kill mechanism. It was about the intelligence gathering that made the kill possible. Mossad deployed directional microphones that could pick up conversations from hundreds of meters away. They used tiny, short-life transmitters, known as bugs, that could be dropped into a target's coat pocket by a clumsy passerby in a crowded market. For communication between field teams, they developed a microburst transmitter. Instead of a continuous radio signal that could be triangulated, this device would compress a 10-second message into a 0.1-second burst of encrypted data, making it almost impossible to detect or intercept. But technology could fail. Human intelligence could be flawed. And the enemy was learning. They were becoming more cautious, changing their routines, doubling their security. The hunters were becoming the hunted. And in Norway, the entire operation was about to come crashing down. The primary target, the white whale of the operation, was Ali Hassan Salameh. Known as the Red Prince for his flamboyant lifestyle and wealthy background, Salameh was the charismatic and ruthless commander of Force 17, Yasser Arafat's elite security unit, and the alleged mastermind of the Munich attack. He was intelligent, elusive, and surrounded by a coterie of loyal bodyguards. Finding him became an obsession for Mossad. In the summer of 1973, a trusted source passed intelligence that Salameh was scheduled to meet a PLO courier in the small, quiet town of Lillehammer, Norway. It seemed an unlikely location, but the intelligence was considered A+. Harari dispatched a large team, a mix of veteran Caesarea operatives and newer recruits. The plan was to intercept and kill Salameh on the streets of Lillehammer. The surveillance began. The team identified a man they believed to be Salameh. He matched the physical description, his height, his build. He was meeting with known PLO contacts. For several days, they shadowed him. But there were red flags, small inconsistencies an experienced Katza might have noticed. The target's movements were too simple, too open. He wasn't using counter-surveillance techniques. The operational pressure to get Salameh, however, overrode caution. On July 21, 1973, the trap was sprung. The target, Ahmed Bouchiki, a Moroccan waiter, was walking home from a movie with his pregnant Norwegian wife. A rented Peugeot 504 pulled up alongside them. Two operatives got out and fired 14 shots, killing him instantly in front of his wife. It was a textbook execution. The problem was, it was the wrong man. Bouchiki had no connection to the PLO. He was a complete innocent. The intelligence was catastrophically wrong. The source had been either mistaken or deliberately feeding disinformation. The operational breakdown that followed was total. The getaway team, instead of switching to a clean car, drove their compromised rental vehicle directly to a safe house. An alert Norwegian policeman noted the license plate. Even worse, two members of the team, tasked with logistical support, had used the same car earlier and been stopped for a minor traffic violation. Their names and details noted. Within hours, the Norwegian police began making arrests. One by one, the network unraveled. 6 Mossad operatives, including 2 women, were captured. One of them, Dan Arbel, broke under interrogation and gave up the locations of other safe houses and the names of his comrades. Mike Harari himself, the commander of the operation, managed to escape just hours ahead of the police, fleeing to Israel. The Lillehammer affair was an unmitigated disaster. It exposed the secret war to the world. It resulted in the imprisonment of Israeli agents. It led to a diplomatic crisis with Norway. And it had killed an innocent man. The Wrath of God operation was immediately suspended. In Tel Aviv, the recriminations were savage. Zamir and Harari were called before Committee X. The entire program was under review. Morale within Caesarea plummeted. They had failed, and the world now knew about them. For months, the operation lay dormant. The remaining names on the list breathed easier. They believed the hunt was over. They were wrong. The failure in Lillehammer created a powerful thirst for redemption. Mossad needed a victory, something so audacious and successful it would erase the stain of Norway and re-establish the fear they had worked so hard to cultivate. The target was Beirut, the heart of the PLO's operations, an urban fortress where their leaders lived and worked with impunity. A conventional hit on a single target was no longer enough. The plan, codenamed Operation Spring of Youth, was to decapitate the Black September leadership in a single, coordinated strike. It was a joint operation between Mossad Caesarea and the IDF's most elite Special Forces unit, Sayeret Matkal. The intelligence was gathered over months by Katsas on the ground in Beirut. They identified the precise locations of 3 top-level PLO leaders: Mohammed Youssef al-Najjar, Arafat's deputy and head of Black September; Kamal Adwan, PLO chief of operations; and Kamal Nasser, PLO spokesman and executive committee member. They lived in separate, heavily guarded apartment buildings in a wealthy Beirut neighborhood. The plan was a masterpiece of deception and audacity. On the night of April 9, 1974, Israeli Navy missile boats appeared off the coast of Beirut. Zodiac speedboats were launched, carrying a team of Sayeret Matkal commandos and Caesarea agents. They landed on a deserted beach where they were met by Mossad agents who had driven down to the shore in rented cars. The commandos were disguised as tourists. Several of them, including the future Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, were dressed as women, wearing wigs and stuffing their blouses with padding to conceal their weapons and explosives. They drove calmly through the Beirut night until they reached the target neighborhood. The force split into 3 teams. At precisely 01:30, the attacks were synchronized. Barak's team entered al-Najjar's building, killing a guard with a silenced pistol. They placed a high explosive charge on his apartment door, blew it open, and neutralized al-Najjar and his wife, who reached for a weapon. Simultaneously, the other 2 teams stormed the buildings of Adwan and Nasser. The fighting was intense and at close range. Adwan was killed in a fierce gun battle. Nasser was killed at his desk. As the primary missions were being carried out, other commando units attacked the PFLP's headquarters and a weapons factory, creating chaos and confusion. The entire operation on the ground in Beirut lasted less than 30 minutes. As Lebanese police and PLO reinforcements rushed to the scene, the Israeli teams were already back in their cars, driving to the beach and exfiltrating by sea. They left behind 3 dead PLO leaders, dozens of other militants, and a clear, terrifying message. Not even Beirut is safe. The stain of Lillehammer had been washed away in fire and blood. The hunt for the Red Prince was back on. The final act of the drama centered on Ali Hassan Salameh. After the Beirut raid, he knew he was a marked man. He became a ghost, constantly moving, changing his appearance, trusting no one outside his inner circle of 417 bodyguards. For 5 years, Mossad hunted him. They had near misses. A plan to kill him in Switzerland was aborted at the last minute, when the agent in place determined the risk of collateral damage was too high. A plot in London fell apart when Salameh failed to show for a scheduled meeting. He seemed to have a sixth sense, an uncanny ability to evade the traps laid for him. Mossad realized that their traditional methods of surveillance were not enough. They couldn't get close enough to Salameh's inner circle. They needed a new kind of weapon, an agent who could penetrate his personal defenses. They found her in a British woman named Erica Chambers. In reality, she was a Mossad agent, a combatant recruited for her intelligence, her language skills, and her ability to project an aura of sympathetic, pro-Palestinian activism. She spent months building a credible cover story, becoming a charity worker for an organization helping Palestinian refugees. She was introduced into circles where she would eventually cross paths with Salameh's associates. Her mission was not to kill him, but simply to get close to him, to become a trusted part of his environment. It was a long, patient game. Chambers met Salameh in Beirut. He was charmed by her. She was intelligent, passionate about the cause, and seemingly posed no threat. They began an affair. For months, she fed Mossad a steady stream of priceless intelligence about his daily life, his routines, his security measures. She identified the routes he took, the cars he used, the times he left his apartment. She became the key that would unlock the fortress. The final plan was meticulously crafted. It would not be a shooting. It would be a car bomb, powerful enough to overcome his armored vehicles and kill him instantly. The Nevayot division built the device. It was composed of over 100 kilograms of high explosives, packed into the side panels and chassis of a Volkswagen Beetle. The car was prepared in Europe and shipped to Beirut. Erica Chambers rented an apartment with a balcony overlooking Rue Verdun, a street Salameh used every day. On January 22, 1979, a Mossad agent, operating under the cover of a German artist, parked the booby-trapped Volkswagen along Rue Verdun. He then went to Chambers' apartment. From her balcony, he had a perfect view of the street. He held a radio detonator. The wait began. 15:32. The surveillance team radios that Salameh has left his apartment and is en route. 2 Chevrolet station wagons make up his convoy. He is in the lead car. 15:35. The convoy turns onto Rue Verdun. It is moving at a steady speed. Chambers stands on the balcony, a signal to the triggerman that the target is confirmed and in sight. She turns and walks back inside her apartment, her part in the operation complete. 15:36. The lead Chevrolet passes the parked Volkswagen. The agent on the balcony waits for the precise moment the passenger door, where Salameh is sitting, is aligned with the bulk of the explosive charge. 15:36 and 12 seconds. He presses the button. The detonation is immense. A column of fire and smoke erupts into the sky. The Volkswagen is vaporized. Salameh's Chevrolet is hurled through the air, a mangled wreck of twisted metal. The explosion kills Salameh and his 4 bodyguards instantly. It also kills 4 innocent bystanders, including a British student and a German nun, and injures 18 others. The Red Prince was dead. The mission was complete. The Caesarea team, including Erica Chambers, was exfiltrated from Beirut within 3 hours. They left behind a scene of carnage and a PLO leadership in disarray. The death of Salameh, their most effective and charismatic operational commander, was a devastating blow. Yasser Arafat, visibly shaken, attended his funeral in a massive procession through the streets of Beirut. Publicly, Israel denied any involvement. The world's media speculated, but there was no proof. Privately, within the corridors of Mossad and the government, the operation was hailed as a monumental success, the final closing of the book on Munich. The men who had planned the murder of Israeli athletes were, almost to a man, now dead. But the echo of the operation was complex and far-reaching. The Wrath of God campaign lasted for nearly 2 decades. It involved dozens of assassinations, some confirmed, others merely suspected. It fundamentally changed the nature of intelligence operations, pioneering techniques of international, state-sponsored targeted killings that would be studied and copied by other nations for years to come. The cost was high. Innocent lives were lost, most tragically in Lillehammer, but also as collateral damage in other attacks. It drew Israel into a cycle of strike and counterstrike, a shadow war with no clear end. But the final revelation of the operation's true purpose was not about vengeance. It was about strategy. The mission was never just to kill the perpetrators of Munich. That was the emotional justification, the public-facing narrative. The core objective, as envisioned by Committee X from the very beginning, was to systematically dismantle the operational infrastructure of Palestinian militant groups across Europe. Before Dauerwurst,